Hello and welcome to Weather on the Go, all your weather coverage. Happy Wednesday, middle of the week, everybody, and we have lots to talk about. I'm kind of honing in on the details of the severe weather event as we head through the week, through midweek into late week, and then the severe weather extending into the weekend, and kind of looking at the winter side of things on the storm system as well. So I'll kind of be just honing in here on this huge storm system across the center of the country in this video here today. So temperatures here as we head into today, a lot of warm air across the here central and southern plains into the southeast here. We got temperatures in Oklahoma and central and western Oklahoma getting down into the panhandle of Texas, central Texas, well into the 90s, even approaching 100 in a couple of spots here in the very dry areas into Texas, even some 70s, low 70s here extending up into southern portions of Nebraska. Now as we head into tonight, temperatures still very cool up in the northern part of the country here, where still some of that snowpack does linger across portions of North Dakota and down into South Dakota and up into Montana. Temperatures will be in the teens to 20s. And then farther south here where that warmer air does lie, down near Dallas, lows around 70 in Dallas. Wichita Falls here, mid to upper 60s. And then as you get up here towards Wichita, Kansas, you could see temperatures in the middle 50s for lows. Even up towards Chicago, temperatures still in the upper 40s. So kind of a milder night across the center of the country. And that is indicative here of a storm system moving through as well. Now, as we look at the day one outlook here from the Storm Prediction Center, a slight risk zone has been introduced here for the day one outlook from the Storm Prediction Center from southeastern, really just far southeastern portions of Kansas across much of central and eastern Oklahoma, maybe a far northwest sliver there of Arkansas, far southwestern part here there of Missouri, with a marginal risk extending into southern and central Missouri over toward the St. Louis area, getting back down to Little Rock here into central and northwestern portions there of Arkansas. Now looking at the tornado threat here today, a 5% tornado risk zone kind of centered on the Tulsa, Oklahoma area into far northeastern and eastern portions there of Oklahoma, maybe even some tornado probabilities of about 2% getting up into southeastern portions there of Kansas. And then a hatched 15% risk of large hail today of 2-inch hail or larger across portions of central and eastern Oklahoma. Even some hail probabilities getting over, like I said, towards St. Louis, Springfield, Missouri, getting down towards the Jonesboro area, maybe just north of there, and then toward the Little Rock and Fort Smith area as well. And then a general wind risk mainly across portions there of east central Oklahoma into southeastern Kansas. So why are we seeing this here today? We got a lot of warm air advection pushing up into this area here from the south and pushing up to the north here with the boundary starting to set up across the central plains. We got lots of 80s and 90s down in the panhandle here of Texas, into the panhandle and western portions there of Oklahoma, and on the very far eastern plume of that, where that differential heating zone is with 60s and 50s to the east, and you got 70s, 80s, and 90s to the west, there would be enough lift in the atmosphere to get these thunderstorms to go. Also here with a little bit of that Gulf of Mexico moisture kind of opened up. We have a little narrow plume of some, low to mid 60s dew points here pushing up into central and western Oklahoma, maybe nosing its way into southern and southeastern portions there of Kansas. And that'll be enough here to provide those updrafts here to really invigorate as we head into the afternoon. And the reason for this, when you combine both the warm temperatures and those higher dew points in the 60s, you'll get here convective available potential energy values, or CAPE, that will be moving up into the 2,000 to 3,000 plus range here, maybe even locally over 3,000 joules per kilogram here across portions of far eastern Oklahoma and nosing its way down here into northeast Texas and then up into southeastern Kansas in that slight risk zone here that the Storm Prediction Center did lay out. Now there's one caveat to this, and the caveat is that there's going to be a little bit of a surface and mixed layer cap that is going to be on the atmosphere, kind of inhibiting those thunderstorms from growing really tall into the atmosphere, kind of like a steel wall across the differential heating zone. So once that here the boundary starts to move to the east and we have some wind shear that'll be pushing in here from the west, may be enough to kind of override that cap and start to break through that cap, and we can see some very strong thunderstorms and a couple of supercells develop, but not really looking at a terribly strong shear environment here today, kind of more of a higher CAPE, low shear environment across the central and southern plains here as we head into this afternoon, with shear values of around 40 to maybe up to 50 knots here coming out of the west with these westerlies here in the atmosphere. And then Putting this all together, the supercell composite values are there, so we do have the potential for some supercells if that cap does break along that differential heating zone across portions of southern and southeastern Kansas, getting down to Oklahoma and Texas. So we'll look at that here. This is the composite reflectivity here on the NAM model here around midday that came out, and you can see this is late here this afternoon. Not much going on. Do have some rainfall getting up here into portions of the Midwest, into the Mississippi Valley, with maybe some thunderstorm activity, non-severe weather up into those areas around the Ozarks, getting down here into portions of the Mid-South. But westward here, not too much going on. Maybe some growing cumulus field here across portions of Kansas, down into Oklahoma and North Texas. As we head through the afternoon, you can kind of get a little hint that some bubblers will start to grow here into portions of central Oklahoma, and we could have some supercells here, including the potential for a couple of tornadoes, some very large 2-inch or larger hail, and potentially here even some 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts with these supercell potential if they can break through that cap. Now, the limited coverage here as we head to the afternoon, so not everybody in this slight risk zone will see severe weather or even thunderstorms at all, but the potential is there as we head into late this afternoon. And then towards here the sunset here as we head into the evening, that instability will start to wane and all the dynamics will start to fall apart here, and we'll start to see the storms weaken as they push toward the Arkansas-Missouri border. And then we might have a little bit of some backbuilding as we head to the evening hour, just due to some of the fact that the low-level jet will start to increase, but should not be really too much of severe weather as we head into the evening. Maybe an isolated stronger storm, but not looking at too much severe weather here after sunset. Now, as we head into the day 2 outlook, the Storm Prediction Center, similar zone, maybe just a bit farther north, has a slight risk zone of severe weather from central and eastern Kansas, far southeastern Nebraska, far northwestern and western portions there of Missouri, including the Kansas City region, getting down to Wichita and Topeka, Salina, Kansas, getting up just south and east there of Lincoln, Nebraska, south of Omaha, Nebraska, and then you have that extending back down into far northern Oklahoma as well, with a marginal risk extending up toward the Des Moines area, Kirksville, Missouri, maybe just south and west of the Quad Cities, and Davenport, Iowa, and then here getting back down towards the panhandle of Texas as well. Now, another 5% tornado risk is centered kind of on portions of south central Kansas and a far northern Oklahoma, and then a 2% tornado risk nosing its way down towards the Oklahoma, Texas panhandle areas as we head into tomorrow afternoon and evening, and then another 15% hatched risk for 2-inch or larger hail across portions of south central Kansas, getting into far northern Oklahoma, with a general hail risk across getting up into the upper Midwest into Iowa and Missouri as well. And then you got that wind risk here tomorrow, not as high, but a 5% wind risk with winds that could be up to 60 or 70 miles an hour with the strongest updrafts. Looking at tomorrow here, the bigger picture across the country, temperatures will be warming again here, even further to the north as we have a warm frontal boundary that'll start to be setting up across the upper Midwest and the mid-Mississippi Valley areas. Just along and south of that boundary where we find all that warm air advection, a lot of that moisture pooling up along that front, and you're going to see a lot of temperatures in the 70s, well into the 80s as you get down to the southern plains, and even into Texas again. Widespread 90s from the panhandle of Texas down through central Texas and west Texas as we head into the afternoon, even getting into portions there of eastern New Mexico as well. Excuse me, and lower 60s to the north of that boundary, upper 60s to 70s to the south of that boundary. So here you could be sitting at 70 here in Des Moines, where you get into southern portions there of Minnesota. Temperatures only be in the mid to upper 50s here along that boundary. And where we see that here a little bit as we head into tomorrow with that boundary retreating to the north, we do have a little bit of some differential heating yet again, with kind of a little bit of a boundary layer here, moisture pooling up along this front, with here the northern plume of this here contributing to some Cape Valleys. Temperatures will be rising to the 70s and 80s and even 90s. Dew points will be rising well into the 60s, even some widespread low 70s potentially down into Oklahoma and north and northeast Texas, down toward the Dallas-Fort Worth area, getting up into Oklahoma City, Tulsa, the Fort Sill area, getting up toward El Reno. And then here, the northern plume of that, you'll have instability will be growing, potentially even more robust than today here as we head into tomorrow afternoon and evening with those dew points rising and those warm temperatures. There's no surprise that the instability values will be approaching or exceeding 2,000 or even 3,000 joules per kilogram, especially from central and southern portions there of Kansas, nosing its way down here into west central portions of Oklahoma, eastern portions of the Panhandle of Texas, down into central Texas here as well. Now, again, with that retreating warm front moving to the north, kind of have another development of a cap on the atmosphere, especially across south central Kansas, down into Oklahoma, and into North Texas here as we head into late tomorrow afternoon. Now, the shear values tomorrow will be a little more robust, especially with northward extent into portions of Nebraska and getting down into Kansas and northwestern portions there of Missouri and up into portions there of Iowa. So the northeastern part of this outlook here tomorrow will be a higher shear, lower Cape environment. And then as you get down into Kansas here and especially Oklahoma and Texas will be more here of a higher Cape, low shear environment. So kind of offsetting a little bit, but kind of where those overlap will be around Kansas here. And that's where I'm looking at as we head into late tomorrow afternoon. And the supercell composite values, highest across southern and southeastern Kansas, getting into central portions of Oklahoma and the Panhandle of Texas here as well, maybe inching its way down toward the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Wichita Falls, as we head to late tomorrow afternoon. Now, this is a sounding from northern Oklahoma here around portions of the, just north of the Oklahoma City area and west of Tulsa. It does show a cap on the atmosphere where you see these reds and greens come together here on this kind of a skew chart, if you will. You can see it comes right together, and that is a cap on the lower part of the atmosphere here going up to around, a few thousand feet or so. But then at the surface, you got winds coming out of the south and east-southeast, but then you go a few thousand feet up, winds will be coming and screaming out of the portions of the south and west, and then a few thousand more feet up into the mid and upper levels that will be coming out of the west here. So a lot of wind shear in the atmosphere, so no surprise that the possible hazard tag is marginal tornado. And a decent hodograph, I mean, I've seen better, but still a little bit of rotation in the atmosphere. You got all that surface-based instability in excess of 2,000 or so joules per kilogram. The D-Cape over 1,000. So at the very least, some very strong updrafts with these thunderstorms to produce some very big and giant hail as we head into tomorrow, potentially over 2 inches in diameter, maybe even up to 3 inches in diameter here with the strongest storms that I'm seeing here, especially when you see D-Cape up to over 1,000 here and maybe even wind gusts over 70 miles an hour here as well. So we'll have to monitor that. So as we head into late tomorrow afternoon, some bubbling here, kind of some cumulus fields of clouds here across portions of Kansas down to Oklahoma late in the afternoon here around 4 or 5 o'clock. And then this will continue here. But the problem is here cap to the south into Oklahoma and Kansas will hold pretty strong, where you have that warm frontal boundary and that cap kind of starts to break a little with that stronger shear pushing in from the west. We'll have some elevated thunderstorms along and ahead of that warm front as we head into Thursday night. And that'll continue to retreat to the north and east into Iowa with maybe some stronger elevated hailers into portions of Iowa, getting into western Illinois and getting up into portions of South Dakota, southwestern Minnesota. But where we can break that cap here down into Kansas and Oklahoma as we head into the evening could have some supercells. Now, the NAM model on this run does not get too excited about the severe weather threat across Kansas and Oklahoma, but I do promise you that the severe weather threat is there for tomorrow. So if that cap can break, those thunderstorms will grow very tall, produce some very big hail, maybe a couple of tornadoes, and even that here isolated to widely scattered damaging wind risk with gusts that could be up to or over 70 miles per hour. And then the storms will continue to push to the east here with some more elevated hailers across portions of central and western Iowa, eastern Nebraska as we head toward Friday morning. And then that leads us to Friday, another severe weather outlook here from the Storm Prediction Center with a marginal risk extending as far north here as central portions of Minnesota, southeastern North Dakota, much of South Dakota, and then much of the state of Iowa under that marginal risk zone, getting over towards western and northwest Illinois there toward the Davenport area with the Quad Cities, up toward Dubuque, Iowa, and portions of La Crosse, Wisconsin, Des Moines, Iowa, getting down toward Kirksville, Missouri. But then the real threat here of a slight risk or 2 of 5 risk will be here from portions of southeastern South Dakota, central and eastern Nebraska, western and central portions of Kansas, and the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma here as well, toward the Lubbock area, getting up here into portions of Woodward, Kansas. And so we'll Woodward, Oklahoma, and getting up into Wichita area, getting up into Lincoln, Nebraska. So we'll hear a lot of areas will be covered, maybe just on the western side there of Omaha, Nebraska here as well. And then we go into Saturday, another risk for severe weather, but slightly to the east here as a kind of a cold frontal boundary will slowly be drifting here from west to east with that dry line. And you can see here 15% or slight risk here across portions of central Iowa, getting down to northwest Missouri, east central portions there of Kansas, far southeastern portions there of Nebraska, and maybe far northern Oklahoma here as well on Saturday. Now, why is this happening? Well, we do have another significant here, robust trough coming into the western part of the United States. That will be bringing some healthy rains across northern and central California here as we head through the Friday time period. As this trough continues to push east here toward the Colorado Rockies here into the Intermountain West, you can see here it starts to take a little bit of a negative tilt, which means that here more amplifying here of the ridge to the east, a lot of warmer temperature anomalies will be here likely with a lot of cooler air being here drawn down from Canada into the northwestern and western states here as we head into Saturday. And this will continue to tightly wrap here with a developing low pressure system here around the Colorado Rockies on the lee side of the Rockies. And this will rapidly lift up in the northeast here into South Dakota and North Dakota here on Saturday and really get tightly wound. And then on the backside here, some heavier snow that we'll talk about here in just a moment. But ahead of this trough, a lot of wind shear here with mid and upper level winds here pretty strong. So even the lower level here, the lower level jet here getting pretty strong. A lot of warm advection with all that western Gulf of Mexico moisture being pooled up here all the way to the north into the upper Midwest. And that will create temperatures that will be here into the 70s and 80s across portions of Illinois, some lower to mid 80s across portions there of central and northern Missouri, a lot of 70s and 80s here across portions of the southern and central plains, getting into the mid-south here as well. And you can clearly see where that warm front extends from northern Illinois back into northern Iowa and up into portions there of South Dakota and back down and through Indiana here as we head into Friday afternoon. And just along and south of that warm front here, dew points will be cooling into the low to mid 60s, maybe some isolated 70-degree dew points here. And you can clearly, like I said, see where that here warm front is, where dew points will be in the 40s in southern Wisconsin. You go a few hundred miles south or a couple hours south drive, dew points will be into the mid to even upper 60s here on Friday afternoon with that juicier air mass here. All that moisture will be pooling up all the way into portions of southern Minnesota as we head into Friday night. And that will contribute to some pretty high Cape values pretty far north as well into south central Minnesota. We could have Cape values that could be approaching 2,500 joules per kilogram, and that'll extend down through the dry line here across central portions of the country here into the central Great Plains, and then over toward the mid-Mississippi Valley here as well on Friday afternoon. Now, with that trough coming in here, you also got that wind shear as well, and that will be rounding the base of that trough. A pretty good here negatively tilted or slightly negatively tilted trough will be pushing in, and just to the east of there where all that unstable air is, here we could have that severe weather potential here even into Saturday as well. Now, looking at Saturday, temperatures will be rising well again here into the 70s, some 80s. I wouldn't discount that this could be a little underdone. I think potentially some 80s could be as far north as southern Wisconsin vicinity, maybe even northern Iowa, getting back into eastern Nebraska here on Saturday, depending on here kind of the overall synoptic pattern of the thunderstorm activity. But I do think that could be underdone here across some of the Midwest, so we'll have to see how that plays out. And then the dew points here, if we do get those, if the model was underdone here and we do get that warmer temperatures in the lower to mid 80s, these dew points will back down into the 50s with kind of some mixing out of the dew points, but still some upper 50s to lower 60 dew points here across the Midwest, some middle 60 dew points down into Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas. So much of the eastern 2/3 of the country will be here baking in a little bit of some summer-like warmth and humidity as we head toward the Saturday time frame. Now, on Saturday, the instability values are not looking as robust as on Friday, but still there across all the way up to here the Canadian provinces. We could have instability up to around 1,000 or so joules per kilogram, all the way up towards Lake Superior, northern Minnesota here into southern portions of Canada, and then here tailing down with that cold front and that dry line all the way down through Texas here, at least some isolated to scattered locations there of at least 1,000 to 1,500 joules per kilogram of instability, which is really all you need here, especially when you given the fact that these very strong low and mid-level winds will be coming in here with this trough around the rounding the base of this trough and into those storms. here. So if you can mix a little bit of both here, we could have some severe weather on Saturday. Now looking at Friday, a little bit of a closer view here. Along this dry line, instability will be growing here around 2,000 to 2,000 from 2,000 to 2,500 joules per kilogram across these areas, and that'll extend up into northwest Iowa and Minnesota as well. Another thing here on Friday is that here the NAM is showing here some pretty robust values here of some inhibition or a cap on the atmosphere as we head toward the central and southern plains, getting up into the upper Midwest, especially along that warm front as it's moving to the north, and that could play a little bit of a role into kind of the thunderstorm coverage as we head into Friday. But some here earlier in the afternoon, seeing some pretty lower values of wind shear across the area with these westerlies pretty slow from 30 to 40 knots here out of the west. But this will only increase as this here as the shear kind of rounds the base of that trough and gets up into the upper Midwest, into the Great Plains region, and the instability will start to grow across portions there of Nebraska, getting down through Kansas, western Iowa, and that will contribute to some supercell composite values, some pretty decent values, especially along that front here, the warm front with some hailers across Iowa, some large hail across those areas, maybe into northwestern Illinois, and then some hailers up here across portions of South Dakota as well. And then as you get down here into Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma, and down toward Texas, more of some large hail, so the tornado risk will be there, and also with the damaging winds over 70 miles an hour as well. Significant tornado parameters, some decent values getting up here into the Nebraska area, South Dakota along that warm front. We'll have to see how that works out, and then down through the dry line here into the central Great Plains, through western Kansas, and down toward the Oklahoma Panhandle and Texas Panhandle as well. Now, this is a sounding from near Lincoln, Nebraska here with the significant tornado parameters, a little bit of a small cap in the lower levels of the atmosphere, but it does show a possible hazard tag of tornadoes, and we do have a pretty impressive hodograph here being shown here on the model with winds at the surface out of the south-southeast and then a few thousand feet up here, slowing with height, but then speeding up into the mid-levels here with height, with the winds kind of veering around to the west-southwest and decape up around 1,300 plus, so that could support maybe up to 80 plus mile per hour wind gusts here potentially, or some extremely large hail, and maybe even a strong tornado potential here up into the Nebraska around that warm front and dry line area, kind of near that triple point, if you will, as we head to Friday night. So we'll have to watch that. Now, looking at this on the composite reflectivity, you can see kind of some line of storms off to the west. This will continue to kind of invigorate and push to the east. Some development of some supercell storms as we head to Friday evening. Again, with that cap in place, it is going to be kind of tough to get some of these storms to going here in Kansas and Oklahoma. But if they do go, they will probably be severe, and be severe very quickly here on Friday. Then Saturday, like I said, the dew points here will be rising with those warm temperatures. Instability will be growing here across portions of Iowa, getting down here through Texas, and that will support here some severe weather with all that shear here in place. The supercell composite values here on Saturday not looking as impressive, but still the threat is there for some supercells even up here into portions of Minnesota, Iowa, and down through this lower Missouri, Ozarks region into portions here of the Central Plains as well. Now, looking at this here on Saturday, some storms will be getting going across eastern Nebraska and South Dakota, and as this cold front pushes east, kind of a squall line might start to develop, or at least a QLCS line with some embedded tornado potential. Maybe here's some damaging winds and some scattered large hail potential as we head towards Saturday evening with the incoming cold front here from west to east. Now, looking at this all together through the next several days, a lot of rainfall as these thunderstorms will be training over the same areas. 2 to 4 plus inches of rain could be expected from northern Illinois, southeastern Iowa, southwestward into much of Missouri, into portions there of Oklahoma, northwestern Arkansas, southeastern Kansas, and getting down toward the North Texas region. Dallas could even see rainfall amounts of 2 to 3 inches here as we head through this event. And then that wraparound moisture with all that cold air here across portions of the northern side of the storm system. And let's not forget all the beneficial rains across northern and central California here. That will be great for those areas in the drought here, as especially they are still stuck in that severe and extreme drought. Now, the new drought monitor does come out here tomorrow, so I will show you the update from that when the National Drought Mitigation Center does come out with that here as we head into our Thursday tomorrow. I will show you the new drought monitor for that across the country. Now, like I said, the snowfall on the backside, some heavy snow across Montana, getting down here into portions of Wyoming. And then you can see here some pretty decent values of some snowfall here with some 1 to 2 inch per hour rates getting into western Dakotas here, and then kind of wrapping around with a 990 millibar low kind of on the Dakotas here, North Dakota, South Dakota border there, and that will continue to push off to the east here through time. Now, the GFS is showing some robust snowfall across western and central portions of North Dakota, northwestern South Dakota, back into Montana, and portions there of Wyoming, up to around a foot potentially here in some locations there as well. And then the DDPS, or one of the Canadian models, kind of a little farther west and more bullish with the snowfall up to around 20 inches here across portions, especially of eastern Montana, getting down into Wyoming, with a little less here in North Dakota and South Dakota. So it all has to do with the placement of that low pressure system when it comes to that time. So I'm sorry there was a lot to go over here on this video today, a lot of dynamics here with this storm system coming up. I wanted to keep you ahead of all of the weather here for the week ahead. So do be sure to like my video, give me a thumbs up here, and also here leave your questions and comments below. I do appreciate watching here to see what the comments and questions are and answering those for you. And do remember to subscribe to my channel here to catch the latest weather forecast updates here through the week and through the season here this year. So everybody have a great Thursday out there, and I'll catch you in the next video.